Good afternoon, everyone. Today I'm chatting with Gary Thompson and Galen McNamara, who are both the CEOs of silver companies that have decided to join forces. I'm talking Silver47 and Summa Silver. In today's interview, we get into the silver market, why silver hasn't had quite as much momentum in it as gold, and we get into the new transaction. Galen breaks down the terms for us, and Gary gives us an idea of what the long-term strategy is for the combined entity. All right, everybody, enjoy the interview. Galen, Gary, thanks for hopping on here. Let's start off talking about silver because uh, gold has had just a tremendous last 12 months, we'll say, trading over $3,200 at the time of filming. There's obviously been a fair bit of volatility in the gold. Silver's been it's kind of just sort of hung in there around that 32, $33 range. I'm curious. I'll start with you, Galen. What's your thesis on what's happening with silver right now? What's going through your head when you're thinking about the silver market?
It's like catch up time, is one of the things that's really going through my head because as I'm sure many of the viewers know, is that, in bull markets, gold starts and then silver catches up and often greatly outperforms. So one of the things I was actually doing the other day just for fun is that I've now gotten myself interested in Chat GPT and using it pretty daily is I gamed out this scenario for gold and silver about, what can happen and it really helped me study and refresh my memory in a concise way about what happens in these bull markets. And yeah, like there's just so many examples that gold starts, silver follows. But I think that's really only half the story here. There's also the idea, the concept of like this new industrial needs for silver because it's a very good conductor of electricity, better even than gold, which surprised me when I first learned that. But because of that, of course, it's being used greatly in solar panels, potentially in new batteries, and just a little bit of silver goes into each of these in each of these things. But when there's big build outs, you kind of got to have it. And in a small market like silver, that's like plus or minus a billion ounces a year. Seems like a big number, but it's really not. It's really not at all. So I just again, many reasons to own silver, many reasons to be bullish on silver, and of course we are, and that's one of the reasons we're here.
Gary, since the last time we spoke, I think that if we talked about what gold's done, I think that both of us probably would have thought that we would have seen more of a lift in silver. What do you think it's going to take? What's that catalyst for us to start to see some more investment in silver that's going to move the price?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think everybody would like to know what is that pivot. I think it's just going to surprise us, and it'll just happen one day. I think what we're seeing that's a bit of a different twist on silver than that we haven't seen historically, where you can actually track the correlation to gold silver. You historically tracked quite well, but Galen touched on that is the demand on the industrial side, is about to explode. We haven't seen, just recently Samsung developed a new battery, a silver graphite battery, and a solid state battery that's much more stable and has a longer life. So once those actually get commercial in the market, that's going to just add another significant layer of demand. We're already going into a fifth year deficit. So I mean, how many years can you run a deficit in a market like this when silver is really a niche market? So I don't think we can put our sort of a date on when that's going to explode, but I think a lot of the silver guys that are in the space, I think we're all in the same train of thought that silver is about to explode higher on price, and when that happens, we'll all know. But there's just a lot of factors. I think teeing up to push silver much higher.
You know what I find fascinating about the Samsung battery announcement is that it's Samsung. It's not, we're not talking about like some new battery technology that was invented at the University of Wisconsin or something, or one of those fringy headlines. We're talking about one, they might even be the top electronics manufacturer in the world. They clearly have somewhat of an edge in batteries. It's it is a significant thing.
Hmm.
Galen, let me ask you, because I've asked Gary this before, but what's your take on the gold to silver ratio? Do you think that it means anything? You think that it's something that investors should consider? Because I hear all sorts of perspectives on it. I mean, when I talk with Keith Newmeyer, he always says he believes that it should be trading at 7 to 1. I talk to other people, they're like, well, it's maybe that number should be closer to 30. What's your viewpoint on it?
Well, let's start at the first principle here, and that's the concentration of mine to silver to gold and silver to gold in the earth. And it's like 7 to 1 or 8 to 1 or something like that. So to have that position that that's what it should be in a really efficient, in a perfect world, in a perfect market, like that's fair. That's really fair to say that because it's based on reality. And when we're sitting here at today and it's probably 100 to 1, give or take, the last time I remember this happening was like around the spring of 2020, somewhere in there. And I think it even got a bit more out of whack. I think it got even to 110 or 120 then. But of course, we know what happened. We know what happened quickly after that. In the summer of 2020, markets showed us, precious metals market showed us what can happen when things get going. So where should it be? And just to finish that thought, actually, and to say it explicitly, silver and gold did really well for the rest of 2020, very, very well. But where is it going, and where could we see it going? Where do I think it should be? Actually, more importantly, look, I think it should be substantially lower than 100 to 1. I don't know what that number is, but substantially lower. And I think silver just has a lot of catching up to do with gold. And gold now at 3,500, excuse me, touch 3,500, but what 32, 3,300. I mean, if gold does continue to go up more, like silver even has even more catching up to do. So, yeah.
So this kind of interesting to me because I just got back from a mining conference, which I was joking. Actually, made a joke on my Instagram about it that on the last day of the conference they held an open bar reception, and to be perfectly frank, the number of investors that were there at this conference, it wasn't a huge standout number like what you typically would expect with $3,300 gold, and it almost just kind of feels like we've been having this conversation for a while now. We've got this unbelievable macro environment, but there still is this buyer's strike, we could put it in one way, from just the general retail investor. We're not seeing capital flow into these junior names. Now, Gary, I'll give you this question because I know you've been raising money for junior mining projects for decades. When do you think we start to see that capital flow in?
Well, when people start making money again in this space, I mean, the investors have been clobbered in this space in the last down cycle, and the up cycle has been sort of choppy. Even though the metals have been booming, at least gold has been leading this charge. Other than the miners, that the smaller companies have been challenged because investors got clobbered on the last down cycle, and people are still licking their wounds. So if you're a seasoned investor in this space, you've made a lot of money, you've lost a lot of money, you've made a lot of money, and these cycles are, about to repeat itself, and we're coming into that uptick, if you will, and people are starting to make money. We're starting to see M&A. I think M&A is going to continue to accelerate. And I was at a few conferences this year already, and we're seeing new retail investors that have never invested in the mining space, but they're getting themselves up the curve. And to me, that's encouraging that there are retail investors coming back. And in fact, the conferences we went to early in the year were full house. So not only people coming back, but like full attendance on these conferences. So I think it is coming. It's just a slow grind, and I think it comes down to people need to have more wins in this space, and as they do, they tell two friends, and they tell two friends, and 10 friends, and so on, and that's going to start to snowball. But we're not quite there yet, so it's a slow grind higher.
Okay, so let's get into the recent transaction that both you were involved in. Now, I think that it's a very interesting transaction because conversation I have when I chat with some of the bigger silver CEOs, and I have the luxury of chatting with quite a few of them actually. The thing that I hear the most is that there's not very many good primary silver assets out there in the world, and they're getting harder and harder to find. And to Galen's point, uh, There were in another year of a deficit. It's, I believe, the fifth one according to the Silver Institute, and there's going to be a pickup, one would think, with some of these major mining companies starting to try to look for those replacement assets as their reserves start to deplete. So, Galen, congratulations on the transaction. Why don't you break it down for us high level, what the transaction looks like, so that our audience can kind of understand what this new combined entity is going to look like?
Yeah, sure. I think that's great, and I'll keep it high level. So, myself, Galen, I'm the CEO of Summa Silver, and we've got two American high grade silver assets. One is in Nevada, one is in New Mexico, where we've spent the last 5-ish years drilling out mineral resources on both of them, and are now sitting on about 68 million silver equivalent ounces in the inferred category, and then an additional 10 in the indicated category at good high grades above 3 and 400 grams per ton silver equivalent, and a bunch of room to run, a bunch of room to run. But from a philosophical standpoint, one of the things that I was always looking for, in this company as a way to grow it is through M&A, and we've done it through the drill bit, and we can continue and will continue to do that through the drill bit. But, another really good way to do it, I think, is the right M&A transaction, because then we can get to scale more quickly. And to your point, good silver assets are really hard to find. And whoever decided that silver was going to go into the earth also decided that 99% of the time it would go with other things. And they're just very, very rare, and especially in places in like the first world, like the United States. I can count the assets that are high grade that aren't in a major basically on one hand. So, that was my philosophy, and Gary and I started discussing this, I think, seriously, probably back in January, and have walked the path since then. Where if instead of having two, Gary's got a great asset in Alaska that has a lot of precious metals in it, that if we can start, putting them together, start taking a couple things off of the table, in a way that we think that that's going to be very, very attractive to investors in the United States and in Canada, because if I'm investing in something, or if I'm working in a place, like I want to get my metals from first world countries where it's not like a dollars for dictator situation, and places where property rights matter, and there's no better place for that than the United States.
So, what does the next steps look like for the company now? I believe it said in the news release that this is expected to close in Q3. Is that right? Yep.
I think July is
So
sometime in July. I think.
okay. So if we're talking about next steps here, now that you've got sort of that combined entity, is there going to be one area you guys are going to be focusing on exploration for? What does that look like? Maybe I'll ask you, Gary.
Yeah, so we've already, we Silver 47 closed on 9.8 million earlier this year. So we're currently ramping up drilling activities. We'll be starting to drill in Alaska in sometime in early to mid June, and hopefully that program will run right through until the snow chases us out of there. So it is a seasonal operation. So we're going to put in as many meters as we can this season. So that's the main short-term driver for us, and why we want to be aggressive as we can on that asset is we think that with another chunk of resource, so it's mostly resource expansion. We're targeting sort of a 18 to 20 million ton ultimate resource. We think that we can now put our heads towards a PEA stage project on this thing. So looking to get to a new resource statement early in the new year, and then hopefully on the back of that into our PEA. So really moving along quite quickly and more into an advanced stage. So that's the short term, and then we can one of the, I think, great synergies of the combination of Summa and Silver 47 is, while we have this asset in Alaska, we can grow. There's two assets in the southern U.S. and Nevada and New Mexico. So we have this seasonality balance now, and which is important for a junior not to go too quiet on news for too long. So we've got an opportunity to have continued growth and new discoveries on the combined asset base.
So, what's going to be the new management team of the combined entity? Galen, I'll leave you with that question.
Yeah, so we've decided to collaborate and team up and continue to work together. with myself continuing as the CEO and Gary continuing as the executive chair.
Okay. And so what does the whole use of funds here, because you guys are gonna have a significant balance sheet now, is the plan here to just focus on exploration for the projects you guys have moving forward, or are you guys still kind of seeking out to even make this thing bigger?
Yes and yes. Yeah, so we're going to accelerate our exploration, like I said, in Alaska, and then we'll shift gears in the fall and winter months into either New Mexico or Nevada, or a combination of those. Um, and yeah, I don't think we're done here. Like we set out a very aggressive growth strategy to grow this company to 1 billion ounces of silver equivalent. That's a big number, and we're right now on a combined basis, we're about 240 silver equivalent. So we're about 25% way to our target. So we are looking for other like-minded companies and opportunities that or teams that will want to join us in this rapid growth, because we do believe that there's something to be had here.
So Gary, I'm gonna ask you this because you're the one who originally came out with the $1 billion number, which is a
A
I
billion
love
ounce
that.
number.
I love that as a retail investor when companies are chasing big things. I'm not in investing in a sub $1 stock because I want to chase small ideas. I love that concept. But let me ask you this, Gary, because I'm sure you thought about it when you came up with the $1 billion number. Is the way that you plan on getting those other, 700 million plus ounces via acquisition, or do you think that it's going to come via exploration?
I think it's both. I mean, you can drill your way there. I think we have the asset um, that can get us there, but just the timeline, even if you had all the money in the world and 5, 10 drills turning, it's just a time thing. And, everybody's impatient. We're impatient. We want to get at it sooner than later. So you can get there, but I think to get there sooner, it's a combination of drilling aggressively, and aggressively is a function of the capital. So how much capital can you raise? And again, this goes to our whole philosophy here. We need to get bigger to attract capital. A lot of the institutional money is not coming downhill to the, sub 50 million, 30 million market cap companies. It's tough. And if you can get bigger, get scale, you get into the index, you start to get access to better, larger chunks of capital. So then we can be more aggressive on the drilling side. I mean, ultimately, you want to grow organically and pull those ounces out of the resources that you have. But to sort of leapfrog that, as you bring these deals in, like the deal we just did. So Silver 47 had 168 million silver equivalent ounces. On a combined basis, we're now 240. We went from 33% precious metal to base metal ratio to 60% precious to base metal ratio. So we're already in this transaction. We're leapfrog ahead of where we would have. Yeah, we could drill our way there, but we're talking probably a year or two to get to where we are now on the back of this transaction.
So Gary, I'm curious because I know you've recently raised a lot of money and you're chatting with some pretty large investors. Is a major part of the conversation right now with those investors that they want to mostly cut checks into bigger deals, that they view that it's just a lot less risky when a company has you know multiple assets and they have a larger resource right now anyways at this part of the cycle. Like, I know that obviously investors want less risk, but right now in terms of raising capital, is the gap pretty large between, say, a single asset smaller resource company versus a company that's got, say, three assets with significant resources? Is the gap in the ability to raise that money pretty significant right now?
Yes, absolutely. That's one of the key factors of why we're doing this merger, is to scale up. We're still too small. And when I was at a conference recently, and I was kind of joking, looking at all the other companies, the competitors in the room, and I said we could, half jokingly, but this is really a true thing, is if combine all these companies in this room of, I don't know, 30 companies, and we're still too small. So it's really about scale. Scale begets access to capital. The institutional funds, they need liquidity. They can't go into these small juniors and not get out of them. And so we're just trying to get up the food chain, if you will, and we need to do these. Our sector, our junior space, what we know is the amount of capital that's coming into our space is tight and it's limited, and there's less and less fund managers these days. There's a lot of money going into the ETFs. We know that cryptos has pulled a lot of money out, so we're competition for capital, and you've got, it's very competitive space right now, and you have to attract capital. And how do you attract capital? Well, what we're doing, good assets in good jurisdictions, and we're gonna keep growing this story.
It's funny because I was chatting with Terry Lynch a few days ago. I don't know if you guys know Terry,
Yeah.
but he was making a comment to me about how he's now on the board of PDAC, and they were saying that in all of Canada in 2024 they only raised $20 billion, and like you think about how tiny of a number that is. That's equivalent to like one large IPO in the U.S.,
Right.
and it just goes to show you how challenging of a time that it's gotten, and just for our audience who invests in these sort of, early stage mining companies, why they've really got to understand where they're playing on the risk curve. And Galen, obviously you've been working on a company for years, and you chose to take this leap and team up with Gary. Was that really the driving factor here? Was just trying to put together something that was more attractive to institutions as well?
I think that was one of the driving factors because, now pro forma, I mean, we're the largest tier one jurisdiction silver resource within a very small peer group. So it's something that I think helps set us apart. Number one, and then number two, just very high level, like, is this something where we can take our combined market caps of around $40 million each, put them together, and then work to getting it well over 100, just based on, number one, aggressive exploration at site, really going for it at site, but also number two, on an EV per ounce metric, um, catching up to some of our peers. Many of them now are 2, 3, 4 times as valuable on that same metric. So, I just see there as many reasons for us to want to do this.
Yeah, and I see here, based on my math, it's about 19 cents an ounce silver equivalent that you guys are trading at, uh, which I think is fair to say leaves some upside for retail investors if they choose to hop in here.
Yeah, exactly. That's one point, but the other point is that, we're not just going to sit on our hands and hold that out and say we should be higher valued. We're gonna market this aggressively, and we're going to explore aggressively.
All right, so Galen, let's wrap it up with this question because you're stepping into the, I guess, cockpit, so to speak, as the CEO. What if I'm an investor in Silver 47, which I am? What is it that I am looking out for over the next 12 months? If I were to say, okay, the three of us are going to sit down this time next year and we're going to evaluate how the last 12 months went. What does that scorecard look like? What should we be expecting from the company?
Yeah, you know what? I think it's, number one, an aggressive drill program in Alaska at Red Mountain this summer. When I say aggressive, I mean significant step outs that materially expand the resource. In which case, if we're successful, then we're looking at a resource update. Then we're looking at something that might support a PEA, and then we're really advancing this project in a way that's meaningful. And I, not to speak for Gary, but I think that's really what we're trying to do here.
All right. Well, guys, congratulations on the transaction. I think that it's going to be one of those names that we're going to certainly see a whole lot of interest in, certainly on our website and YouTube channel, because I know our audience absolutely loves silver stories and they tend to like them as they get bigger. So I appreciate you guys hopping on here, and let's continue to do this as you guys roll out on your strategy.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. Appreciate the time.
Yeah, sounds great. Thanks.
All right, everybody. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this interview, please smash that like button, subscribe, and ring that notification bell. Guys, also let us know what you think in the comment section. Thanks for watching, everyone.